start, it gets a little bit addictive. You have roughly 2 minutes before hypothermia starts setting in and you lose everybody. What will my peers think? What do they think? I wasn't paying attention? Do they think I'm not clever? Is my job a threat? Some people put in £5 into a charity bucket when you've only got 20. It is a lot more important than someone's putting £100 in when you've got 1,000.
On this week's episode of The Engaging Marketeer, I am speaking to a business coach called Dave Christie. I first met Dave at a BNI Green Club meeting where he was giving a talk on how to avoid ghosting during the sales process. And I thought, I need to get that guy on my podcast. His talk was outstanding, and what he doesn't know about sales and communication really isn't worth knowing. One of the things we're going to talk about is, you know that meme on social media with the guy looking in the mirror saying, you get in there and you make it about you. You make it about you. And it gets put towards like football referees all the time. Referees, you get out there and you make it about you. That's one of the things we're going to be talking about, how most businesses go wrong. Do not make it about you. Make it about the other person. So without further ado, let's get involved with Dave Christie. The elephant in the room, I should point out for those watching, it looks like I've got ketchup on my face. I haven't. I actually was putting in an inliner or reliner because I've got teeth reliners because I'm having my teeth straightened over the course of about a year. While I was putting the new one in last night, I just clipped down and I've cut my own face with my fingernail. So it's a horrific injury, a manly injury, I think. I'd like to say I was defending a pregnant woman from a knife attack or something like that, but I just cut my face with my fingernail. So
happens to all of us.
It does. The less said about that, the better. So let's crack on with the important stuff, shall we?
Absolutely.
Yes. Tell me about ego in business. What do you mean by business ego?
I think everyone has ego. I think that it comes in different forms, and I think there's an emotional intelligence around whether people understand what their ego is and how it plays a part in their life and their business. Mm-hmm. Some people are very aware of their ego and can make sure it doesn't trip them up and doesn't get in the way of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And others let it lead them a little bit, I think, without necessarily knowing they're being led by their ego. I think that the easiest one for me to sort of the example wise is conversation. We all have that person that we know that takes over a conversation because their ego is meaning that they want to respond rather than to listen. And when they ask you that question, they're asking you give them an answer, and instead of exploring that further and asking questions about something, they take over the conversation with their own story.
So rather than waiting for someone to speak, to explore more, they're just waiting for their opportunity to talk.
I think even inadvertently, we all natural set to listen to respond rather than listen to understand. But we all go and ask, oh, how was your holiday? You go, well, where did you go? Oh, I went to Spain. And instead of saying, oh, where in Spain? And how was that? And what was the best thing you liked about it? We go, oh, I've been to Spain and I went here and I did this and I did that. And we inadvertently, or sometimes deliberately, take over those conversations and almost steal that thunder a little bit from people.
It's what you've described there is something exactly what I was told about years ago on a program called Incentive. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a training program. It's like an offshoot of BNI. Ivan Meisner is one of the founders of Incentive as well. And we went through an exercise where we were told exactly that. Somebody says, oh, I went on holiday to Disneyland. Your instinctive reaction is to try and make that person like you by telling them that, oh, I went to Disneyland as well and I went on these rides, to basically get in there and make it about you. But we did this active listening practice where we had somebody speak to us and then we had to respond without at all saying the word I, without jumping in and making conversation about yourself, but you're always asking follow-up questions. So what happened when you went there? What sort of things did you go on? What did you like about it? And if you can do that and master it, which is quite a skill, it makes you a better networker, a better communicator, because the person you're speaking to knows that you are interested in them rather than just waiting for your opportunity to talk about yourself. Just wonder whether you'd come across Ascentive before.
I have heard of it, but I haven't come across it in large detail, no. It's interesting that it's come from Ascentive and Ivan Meisner and obviously across the water as well, because the CIA in what I now time as spy school, because I like the phrase, but when they're kind of recruiting spies and they talk about when you're in that James Bond era, I guess, of trying to build those connections and relationships when you're looking to turn somebody or create a relationship. It's always ask 2 questions and then a confirmation. It's one of their key factors. So if you say, I've been to Spain, it's where have you been? And what was your favourite part? And then reconfirm, yes, Spain is wonderful and that sounds delightful. And then you have those, I think we all have those relationships with people that we just meet them for the first time and think, oh, there's a real connection there. I really got on with that person because they made you the hero of that story. And I think that's how it transpires, even in business, when we're even marketing and advertising our businesses. Are we using our ego to think about what we want to tell people? Or are we being a little bit more emotionally intelligent and thinking about what they need to hear?
And how easy do you think it is for someone to learn to be able to do that?
I think it can be very straightforward. I think but if you set it yourself up to succeed, sometimes we'll just try and, I'll just listen more. Well, it's not going to work because you need to understand the reasons why. You need to understand how that's going to impact your business and start small steps and small habits to make those changes. That's why New Year's resolutions fail. We give up drinking 2 weeks after we spent more time drinking than the whole rest of the year combined in some circumstances. So we set ourselves up to fail. But actually setting yourself up to succeed around what are the small nuances that you can start to change, that you can start to see. It's that red car theory, isn't it? That if you start looking for things, you'll find them. If you start looking and thinking about red cars, you'll see lots more of them. No different to this around thinking around, okay, well, when I think I'm going to respond to something, what trigger can I put in place to make sure that I listen further? Or can I assure myself beforehand that I'm going to have 2 questions that I'm going to ask every time someone says something? I'm going to ask 2 questions. So it's just starting those small habits, and then you'll start to realize, what do I do with that information? And if you can put that information to use, every question, every conversation ends with, oh, that was interesting. So next time I speak to you, I'm going to ask you, through a few weeks in Spain, are you going to have another holiday? Well, actually, what does that show? That shows that you've been attentive, that you've listened, that you're taking them back to that emotive place. And you're building further that relationship and strengthening those connections because you're continuing to think about the other person more than you're thinking about yourself.
And if we look at it from the other side, if you're in a networking meeting or a business meeting with somebody who doesn't do this, who does the opposite, and as soon as they go to ask you a question, no sooner are you 4 or 5 words into answering that they interrupt you to talk about themselves again. What kind of negative impact does that have on a relationship and on a business?
I think it's huge, and even if you don't consciously recognize that actually happens, we all have that person that when we see them come in, our eyes roll and we think, oh no, I need to go. Please don't come and talk to me. And they just suck all your energy out and make it all about them. And whether you're conscious or unconsciously, that's the thought, that's the person. You know that person. You'll also know the person that your face lights up with when they come in the room because you know that they make you feel great. Oh, wonderful. It's great. I love spending time with them. I love our conversations. So it can have a really detrimental effect because sometimes we also don't know we're doing it. We're all at a different knowledge level. And a lot of the time it's not deliberate. We're not deliberately stealing the limelight. We're not deliberately not thinking about others. It's just that's what we know. So we don't know any different and we don't know the impact. But I think it's also about helping and supporting people to see that difference and to understand and maybe have an open, slightly uncomfortable conversation around it as well, because that person might have something really good to say, but they're just saying it all the time, constantly, every second, and actually helping them say, actually, do you know that you talked a lot there and I haven't had a chance to speak? Normally the response is, oh my goodness, I had no idea, because they don't, and because you're only conscious of what you're looking for.
Well, for anyone listening to this now, and I hope there's a couple of people listening to this at least, how would somebody identify that in themselves? Because let's face it, a lot of people do this, and as you say, are completely unaware they're doing it. They're not doing it to be arseholes. They're not doing it to dominate a conversation. They're doing it because that's just how they communicate. And as I mentioned before, they think that people are going to like them better if they familiarize with what someone else has said. So I went to Disneyland. Oh, I went there as well. It's just a natural thing. How can someone identify that about themselves who's listening now?
Reflection is a really key way of looking at that, as small steps of just looking back at conversations and taking a moment of actively looking back and thinking, how did that conversation go? Did I talk more than the other? Ask 2 or 3 questions to yourself. Did I talk more than the other person? Have I actually gained any knowledge from that other person? And when I look back, did it feel like a natural conversation? But also, before you go into an event, a networking event, or ever, think about questions that you want to ask people. Think about a different question. We've all been to an event and had or a trade show. I do a lot of trade show events as well. Of people, how's the show? How's your week? How have you been? Emails, even better. Hope you're well. They're just not. They're just without a question mark. So no one's actually asking you a question. Yeah. So give something a little bit as well. So think around. Okay, I'm going to. If you deliberately think about what you're going to, I want to ask everybody. I'm going to ask 2 questions, even if it's the same question. Then you're actively making a difference. You actually see then if it feels more natural to ask those questions, or if it might feel a little challenging or a little uncomfortable. It probably means it's not something you're used to doing. In which case, that will give you that identifier that maybe it's something that you want to work on a little bit more. But I think I would also look at the reaction of the other person. Do they start to tell you more? If you ask that question, does that change how your relationship with them? Because we all subconsciously, going back to the guess who, have marked up or down the people that we want to do relationships with, do business with, and talk with. But maybe that person's been off with you because you were off with them. We often think that they're not interested in what I've got to say, or they don't like me, or they don't get my business, or whatever it might be. But actually, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you didn't create an environment that allowed them to show themselves in their true character, or you took the mood and the conversation from them, so they were very standoffish, because you might be that person inadvertently that they rolled their eyes when they walked into the room. So I think that reflection and being reflective and looking back and then having those markers allows us to just sense check and not to berate yourself of, oh my God, I'm that person. Actually think, fantastic, I've now got an opportunity to grow and to change and to develop.
I've got to be honest, this is something, before I did Ascentive, I did actually struggle with quite a lot, because I prefer to speak on a stage in front of people. I'm much more comfortable talking in front of 30, 40, 50 people than I am talking one-to-one or one-to-two. The big difference for me has always been that if you're on a stage in front of loads of people, you're commanding the attention, you're the subject, you're the center of attention. I'm an August baby, so apparently that makes sense. Whereas if you're talking to somebody face-to-face, you have to listen. You have to listen to what the other person's saying. So what you said there about having 2 questions to ask is all well and good as an exercise, and for someone who is uncomfortable doing this to have in their mind, I've got 2 questions I'm going to ask these 2 questions, I'm going to do it. You've also got to listen to the answers. And that becomes very difficult for someone like me, because you ask the question, inside you're mentally giving yourself a pat on the back for, yeah, I did that, brilliant, fantastic, awesome, yeah, oh Christ, he's finished talking. Didn't hear any of that. How can you as a business owner, as a person, as a networker, as someone who wants to better themselves, how can you improve your listening skills to then retain and ask further follow-up questions when you're obviously not there to take notes?
No, but I think, again, it comes back down to the reasons why you're asking those questions, the reason why you're at that networking event, and going back to that, why you're in the room in the first place. So if it is to drive and grow your business, that there is the first step of, yes, you should pat yourself on the back that you asked the questions that you didn't do, but you shouldn't also berate yourself that you didn't listen to the answer, because it's one step at a time. And sometimes, we can't be the perfect package of the first or second attempt. But then you can start looking into, why am I asking that question, and what information will I get back? So if I'm asking a question as an example, I'm asking you what kind of clients are you working with at the moment? I can then find out more information that helps me hone my message to you later down the line. It helps me understand your business a little bit more. So it makes me want to listen to the answer, because that will help me if I'm pitching to you, or if I've got a one-to-one with you, or I want to understand your business, and perhaps I've identified you as somebody that I think could help me, or that I could help you. If I'm thinking, well, actually, Darren, I think I can help you, but I need to ask a few questions first, like we would if we're doing a form or filling out a form of what you're interested in on your website. It's no different. So then those responses become interesting to you. You want to hear the responses. And I think that's the difference of asking a question just to ask a question. Don't really care about the answer. That goes back to that how are you? How hope you're well message at the beginning of an email. But I know, as an example, that if I write on that email, how was your weekend, and then give them something. My weekend was great. I spent it climbing mountains. I got up at 2:30 and climbed a mountain with a friend of mine. So it was a bit different of a weekend. They're going to more likely give me something back. And now I'm building that relationship towards the end goal, which is hopefully business either way. And driving and growing and having that importance to my business. So I always try and tie it back to one of two of my goals, or what I'm looking to go and achieve. So it makes me more attentive. I'm in a similar ilk to yourself, is that this wasn't something that came naturally to me. And I'm a coach. I should be listening. And that was the biggest skill, was that active listening element. I would sit there, even as a younger age when I was rugby coaching, and somebody would ask me a question, and halfway through them talking, I go, I know this. I know this. I can tell them I'm going to look great. Sometimes I wouldn't even let them finish. No need to go any further. I've got you. And I tell them, and the thing is, the deceptive part is, they're also happy. They walk away going, great, I've got the answer. They've no idea why. They've no idea how it works. And I've no idea if it's even the right answer, because I haven't quantified or listened properly or assessed whether that's my view, or if I've given them the advice I would do, or something that's better off for them. So actually, the more I realized that I had to really think about what was important for them to help me give them a better response, it made me want to ask better questions. And once you start, it gets a little bit addictive. What kind of questions can I ask? What kind of information can I get out of somebody? How can I challenge myself a little bit further? But it all has to start with that one thing, which is starting to think about how you bring in that habit and change for a reason, not just
for a reason. Yeah, for a reason. That's the thing, isn't it? You need to be doing it for a specific reason, not just for the hell of it. Otherwise, you won't care about the answers. So you won't instinctively listen to the answers because it's just not important to you.
We already have people in groups that we do our stand-up pitches. We will sit there and go through what we want, and I can see people not paying a single bit of attention because they don't see the value. I can see other people that are attentively looking and writing down because they do care and they see the value. That's, again, we can't judge everybody the same. Some people will get things, some people won't. So actually, then we'll refer for a third time back to Guess Who. You can almost knock the lid down on the people who think, well, actually, you're not even trying. You're not trying to engage. So although I'm trying, I'm not getting anything. I now know, well, I don't waste my time there. When we talk about time in the day, sometimes we think this person's going to be our golden goose, as we refer to, etc., and they're not. And it doesn't matter how you can be frustrated about it. Why don't they refer me? Why don't they want to work with me? They'd be perfect. Well, they're not. Move on. And it sometimes needs to be then as brutal as that. The answer is sometimes no answer at all.
Is that something that you would advise then? If you see people, and I've seen them as well, where when you're pitching, you're talking, they are not listening. They are clearly not listening. They're thinking about what they're going to say in a bit later on, and what you're going to say is irrelevant to them. Would you then, this carry on with the Guess Who, would you put them down, ignore them, they're gone, they're out of the game, or would you try to somehow resurrect that, try to get them to pay attention to you, try to get them to buy into what you're saying? Can it be salvaged, or do you just say, right, we've done this again and again and again, that's it, you're dead to me, in effect?
I think maybe not that harshly, but in reality, yeah, if you've done it again and again and again, and you've tried different ways of engaging, then absolutely, I think that specific small business owners, people talk about wearing many hats. I think you just wear one, which is a small business owner hat. It just so happens you do lots of different things. You can't afford to spend your time on those people because you've got business to run, and time is important. And I see too many people spend too much time on that person because they've decided it becomes a personal venture or a personal goal to I will engage them, I will turn them around at the at the cost of what? The people that you could have been spending more time growing and engaging with. I was at an event the other week and I was giving a talk around trade shows, and somebody talked to me about people coming to trade shows and showing them that they're really interested, and then when they followed up, nothing. Ghosted is a great word at the moment that we're talking around. And actually the reality is that that was an answer. They were just being polite at the time, or they didn't get your message, or they didn't understand you. And I've been spending months trying to get hold of them, find them at events, and actually they're giving you the answer. If you've gone 2 or 3 times, move on. We can sometimes spend too much time in areas that aren't going to be advantageous for us because our ego again says, no, they are the right person. They are interested in what we do. They got me. And it might just have been wrong time, wrong place. It could have just been polite. Could be a number of reasons, but our ego won't let it go because that's a lot in our head. Oh, well, I've lost that. And it's not. It's just to move on.
It is definitely a lot. And it's hard to accept sometimes that somebody is not interested in what you're saying, whether it be in a personal relationship or a business relationship. It's sometimes very difficult to realize and come to terms with. But how can you identify that? Because you mentioned trade shows, and I've done trade shows before, and I absolutely loathe them. I loathe everything about them, particularly the people that come around to the trade shows and try to sell to you when you've paid to be on the booth. They can just jump into a meat grinder. But how do you identify when someone is genuinely interested or just being polite so that you don't waste your time, whether it be a trade show, whether it be a networking meeting, whether it be a video call, whether it be your door knocking or they come round? How do you know when someone is genuinely interested? What signs do they give off?
I think it's that it probably goes right back around again to that questions bit. If they're asking the questions, if they're trying to lead things, I often find instantly when someone's going, no, I want to hear about you first. And they make you feel good and they're asking you the questions. That's a great sign instantly. I think that, again, we look at the questions you're asking. Can you ask a question that lets people know whether you're interested or not? I think you can ask questions. If you're asking, how many members of your team have you got? Because you've got a business that needs over 5 members of staff to really be valuable to you. And you go, I just work on my own. Brilliant. Great. You're not the one for me. Great to meet you, but I can move on now. So actually, you can ask questions to see how interested they are and if they are the right fit. But I think if we really look for it and we start to openly look for it, you can tell people that are more interested. Sometimes we get it wrong. I was somewhere recently that I definitely thought that I brought on a new client. They were having the right conversation. It all seemed really great. I've never heard from them since. And that just happens. And I will reflect. I did look back briefly and look and reflect and think, where did I maybe lose them? Where did I maybe not get them? But they were giving all the signs. They were engaging. They were warm. They were asking questions. And sometimes we just get it wrong. And that's also fine. You don't, I think it was, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Michael Jordan.
That's the important pieces there is actually, the more that you look, the more that you'll hone your skill. It's also that you can't just go on day one and think, okay, I'll start looking for people today, and then you'll be a master at detecting who's interested and who's not. But you'll start to see a pattern if you look for it. But if you're not looking for it, you won't see that pattern. It then becomes that roller coaster up and down, hit and miss. You talk to people about it's hit and miss.
How was that?
It's hit and miss. It's hit and miss now. You see, you cannot necessarily dictate what's going to happen. And if someone knocks at the door, the dogs will bark.
They will. They'll have them. They'll have them. It's good that you've got that inbuilt 4-legged doorbell. Yeah, brilliant.
12-legged actually,
12.
which is probably why they picked that up quite nicely.
Jesus, that's a lot of
But I
that.
think, just coming back to that piece, it is about honing the skill. It isn't something you can just say, well, these are the things to look out for. You have to have that sense of it as well. That's that connection that you have. But also, it's probably somebody that you may even find easier to talk to. I used to think that because I'm quite outgoing, I'm dyslexic, so numbers don't really will compute with me. And I used to think, as a lot of people do, or all accountants are boring, I wouldn't have anything in common with them. I probably wouldn't. I coach more accountants than they're not my number one partner because I ask the right questions. I ask things differently. They're keen to learn and develop, and actually, it's around they're the way they make you feel at the same time. We sometimes we listen and we hear, but actually, how do they make you feel, and how do you make them feel?
Hmm.
To walk away from something thinking, "Oh, that was a really positive conversation. I felt really good about that." And even if it's not something for today, it could be something for later down the line. It's all about just scattering seeds, and some of them take time to germinate.
Yeah, it's effectively it's your pipeline, isn't it? It's your sales pipeline. But one thing you mentioned there was identifying people that are not going to be right for you so that you don't waste your time on it. Most salespeople will hate to do that because they don't want to say no. They don't want to dismiss a prospect. They don't want to put a lead down as dead. They want to essentially throw as much shit at the wall as they can and see what sticks because they want to do everything. But one thing that's always difficult is when, as you mentioned, you thought you nearly had a client, but they weren't and they just sort of went cold on you. How do you get that feedback from people who don't choose you? Because I've always found that quite difficult because people don't necessarily want to give you bad news. They'll go with someone else and they won't say the reason why, or they won't contact you. They'll go cold. How do you find out from them? What questions do you ask to find out why they pick someone else? Because that's important for your own development, your own sales process anyway.
Absolutely. I think that we are very uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. We need to be a little bit more comfortable because actually, a lot of people, even if they will still answer you, if you just ask a question and just keep a really simple question. I send emails back if I don't hear from people and just say, I'm looking to learn and develop as a small business owner. I facilitate a scenario where they feel comfortable giving that feedback. So I just wondered if you would answer a couple of questions just to help me become better at what I'm doing and learn and develop. And normally you find that people will come back to you, but you have to ask. And most of the time we don't. We tend to not even ask our current customers why they're with us still and or if they're happy. We presume they're good because the money keeps coming in every month, and or it feels like it seems like everything's fine. But again, we've been in positions where suddenly your best customer goes, "That's it, we're calling time on it," and it comes from nowhere because we don't ask those questions. We don't ask for feedback. So I think it's creating an environment where feedback is around learning and developing. I think people call, "Oh, I'd like some critical feedback." Or constructive feedback, and people hear constructive and still think negative. So it's allowing an environment where they feel they're helping you, makes them more open to that feedback. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, help them along the way. How would you rate this out of 10? They don't have to use words then, and then you can have a line that says additional comments if they feel like they want to add something. But if it's about creating the right environment to get the right answers.
I think that's a great point because I've heard that before in relation to telecoms companies like Virgin Media and Sky TV. When you sign up to one of those, you only ever speak to them twice. Once when they sell you the product, and then however many years later it is when you leave them. In between then, you hear absolutely nothing from them. You get the service, you get the bills, you get the emails about their prices going up, but you never speak to anyone. But as a service provider, as we are, obviously we do marketing and websites for people, and you're a service provider as well, how often should you be contacting your current clients and asking them for feedback about your services? And should it be you doing it, or should it be a third party doing it so that it's more, I'd say, less personal?
I think it should always be personal. I think business is personal. And I think people like that, even if looks like it's you and it's an automated email that comes out every 3 months or whatever it might be. I think actually people like to feel like they've been at least asked the question. They might not always respond and they might not always give you the answer, but actually just to be asked is people feel inclusive and included then as well. And also it helps with regards to boundaries and later conversations where if there is an issue, you can always reflect back on, well, we do send out that. We do ask for feedback regularly. I think that's great, but it's also a shield of pick up the phone, have a conversation, pick up the phone every couple of months, just not randomly. And Darren, Dave, just wanted to check in, just wanted to see how everything's going. When you think about when you purchase a product, if there's a free gift with it and the free gift comes, you go, okay, great, it's a free gift, great. If you get flowers on your birthday, great. Or when you've done something wrong and you give flowers, there's an expert. But if you give it for no reason, you give a gift for no reason, and suddenly from nowhere, I had a charity that I work with just send me a card, simple card, for no reason, just saying, really thanks for your help and support. It means a lot. That got me. That was like, oh, amazing. I wasn't expecting it. So it strengthens, again, those relationships. And we know the cost of bringing in new customers is far greater than the cost of retaining them. So actually doing the extra mile to retain those customers, and maybe they think they have got something on their mind that they want to get off their chest, but they didn't know how to say it or think around it. And they were thinking, as a lot of people do, I'll just leave rather than broach the subject. I'll just leave because it's too difficult for them. You're allowing them to have that. And if it's on a regular basis, they know perhaps they can be proactive and come to you if you're coming to them as well.
Yeah, the free gift thing it's brilliant. It's again, that's something that I got from Responsive, that they talk about. You thank people in B&I when someone gives you a referral, you put in the thank business for them, but we very rarely thank our clients. We don't thank our customers. We don't thank people outside of that mechanism. So it was simple things, like, as you mentioned, a thank you card, as simple as sending somebody a card to thank them for something that they've done or thank them for being with it, sending them something at Christmas or on their birthday that is just unexpected. One thing that we started about 3-4 months ago is that whenever somebody has a website with Engage Web, we don't tell them we're going to do this. Anyone listening to this will know now. We send them a copy of our book when the website goes live.
Okay.
So we don't tell them, it just turns up in the post. And as it happens, many people that have had it have already bought the book on Amazon anyway. But it's only about £2.50 at the moment for those looking. Engage and Grow, 97 Ways to Power Up Your Business. £2.50 on Amazon. So we send it to them anyway. But it's a great way to show them a little bit of love without costing you, well, more than £3, basically. So it does work. It works really, really well. The question I mentioned about getting a third party to do it was because we've done this before by questioning our clients, and we got a marketing consultant to essentially ring all of our clients and go through a list of questions that was on a Google form about prompt of responses, detail of reports, would you recommend, that kind of thing. Because the stuff we thought we were good at, we weren't that good at. And the stuff that we didn't think of, clients really valued and used. So it allowed us to improve the areas that we needed to improve on, but it also allowed us to promote aspects of our business that we didn't think people found important, but they actually did. So it was a really good process to go through, and I do recommend others do that. Particularly if you've got a lot of clients, you can't be phoning them up yourself every so often. To get a third party to do it, go through a survey and actually find out what it is they really like about you, why they stay with you, and what it is they'd like to see improved about you.
Yeah, I think when you get to a certain size, that definitely certainly adds value and saves a lot of time, and it also allows for perhaps a more relaxed conversation because you're dealing with a third party and not something directly. I think the interesting thing about if you're slightly smaller and you're doing it yourself as well is actually you'll be surprised when you're asking for feedback to improve how much additional work you get. And how much that when you phone them up and say, we're looking to improve, how is everything? And they say, my business has totally changed. Well, you would never have known that. And people's businesses develop, your business develops. When you take that step back and you think, well, I want my business to develop and grow, my staff change, my business goals and needs change. But my service providers have no clue that any of that has changed. And maybe they've got something that can help and support me in my new goals or to achieve my new set of dreams or ambitions. So actually, it opens up conversations, which is you never normally have.
No, that's brilliant advice, actually, because we've discovered that as well. Because one of our guys does the client liaison with that, and he's regularly getting in touch with existing clients to find out where they are in their business and how they're going along at the moment. And we've had so much work from doing that. So much work has come in because they're not necessarily aware of what we do and everything that we do. Maybe they've just had a website with us and they don't realize that actually we write blogs as well, or we run Facebook ads, or we train people in how to do digital marketing. And they'll have an honest conversation with him about, oh, we need to be doing this. Is there anyone you can recommend? Well, actually, we can do that for you. And it's worked so well for getting in business because you don't think that your existing clients are a great source of additional business. Everybody's chasing the new shiny penny. Everybody's looking at the new lead, but it costs so much more to get that in. I've heard stats of 4 or 5 times more to win a new client than to retain one. But we don't all do that. We don't all take advantage of that.
Well, I think, again, swinging it all the way back round to the beginning, that's partly where that ego piece comes in as well of, I've got you, you're a customer now, move on. And actually, there is that taking that step, taking and removing that ego, being able to phone up and just having a conversation on an equal level, because people sometimes they see themselves and their clients at different levels. I'm doing you a service. You're not. It's a direct correlation. It's an equal partnership. Like people think coaching is something that happens to them. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's equal conversation. And actually, it helps to know that these are you're all the same people. You're all business people. You're all looking to drive and grow. And actually, you're never too big just to pick up the phone occasionally. Even when you're doing your surveys, I'm still sure you'll randomly pick up the call and speak to somebody because you want to talk to them, because you want to hear from them as well. And sometimes it's great just to know, even for your team to know, oh, actually, the boss is picking up the phone. And still does that as well, because that's important to show your team that you're still engaged as well as your clients.
Yeah, you need to be willing to do everything that you want everyone else to do. Otherwise, you're not leading, you're just commanding. Dictatoring, which isn't it? You mentioned early on rugby coaching. I was wondering what sort of parallels there are between coaching rugby players. Is that rugby league or rugby union?
It was union.
Union. My game. Good, because rugby league I don't understand. So what sort of parallels are there between coaching rugby and coaching business?
A lot indeed. I'm actually one of those strange guys as well that likes union and league. I can see the benefits of both. But I think when you think about rugby union, that put me in really good stead as a coach, because when I coach on a one-to-one basis now, I've got time to get to know people. I've got time to understand them. And maybe I already have spent weeks doing that. When it's rugby, it's even more important to do that and quickly identify as well. Because when it's a cold November evening and it's -5 and it's raining and everyone's finished work, you've got 50 rugby players in front of you who, without doubt, every single one of them thinks they know rugby better than you do, and the person next to them, and has their own ideas and thoughts about their position, the team's goals and everything. And you have roughly 2 minutes before hypothermia starts setting in and you lose everybody. You really have to get your message across clearly, concisely, and get that buy-in from everybody. And that makes you really good at using the right words to communicate with your team. And it also makes you really good at understanding what you need to do before that's come to play, so that when you do that, you have several voices that are around you as well that will amplify your voice, work with you, that you've brought in to understand who your other leaders are around there, that you're not alone, that you can't do it alone, and that you need other people. If I just stood there and shouted at them, I'd lose half of them. If I was to stand there and put an arm around them all, the other half wouldn't understand either. So one of the real elements from that is actually you can't do it on your own. But actually you can lead by that example that you talked around. You can get stuck in with them, but also they have to trust you and you have to trust yourself. But you can also, there's the humility of putting your hand up and going, well, that didn't work and that's on me. And that ego comes into play there massively with that whole, I can't always be right, because I don't know what those individual people are thinking. I don't know if they think they're in the right position, or they've bought into what I'm doing, or why they passed that ball the way they did, to who they did, or why they didn't go for that tackle. I can't assume any of that. I need to ask those questions because I need to find out why it is so that I can, one, see who can go in the best position and where. Two, who my tactical leaders on the pitch are going to be, who understand and can motivate the others around them. And three, sometimes look at myself and my own communication to make sure that, oh, okay, I said that completely wrong. You've got the wrong end of the stick there. I need to improve what I'm doing and what my message is.
There's an awful lot that you've said in there that I want to pick up on, but I'm not sure I'm going to remember it all because I don't make any notes. The first thing I think is worth picking up on is the fact that you've got other leaders around you. That's crucial. There's too many people in business try to do it all themselves and don't realize that you need other people and you need to empower them to make decisions as well and empower them to do that. That's something we've always tried to do. We've got leaders here at Engage Web who make the decisions and are going to be making those decisions because we're not going to be around forever. And they need to understand that the team need to understand that they're the ones making the decisions and that they are empowered, but also clients do as well. Because otherwise you're going to get a client phoning up and they're always going to want to speak to you because you're the boss, you're the owner, you're the one that's really in charge. It's like, no, actually, this person is the one making the decision. They're in charge. They're the ones you need to speak to because otherwise you'll never take yourself out of the business. Never take yourself out. Something else you mentioned there was about the language. Have you not communicated it properly? Because different people respond to different types of communication. And there was something happened in our BNI group the other week, our networking group, where one of the members stood up and did a 60 seconds that was really visual. He had a lamp that he plugged in, and he took the lamp and he put it into a box, and then he took something else and put it into a box. And he thought he was going to win the best 60-second trophy. And I thought he's going to win the best 60-second trophy. But the person judging was analytical. His business was stats, data, analytics. And he was not visual at all. And he gave the trophy to a person that just talked about numbers of savings of what they were going to make on a business. So it's vital for you to know who you're talking to, what type of communication style they have for you to deliver it in the right way. Is that something that you also go towards yourself and you help businesses with?
Absolutely. And even if it's right at the very beginning of just how do you like to communicate, I've got people that will, for me personally, voice note for me on WhatsApp is ideal. Being dyslexic and having fat thumbs means that typing and texting and so on isn't really great for me. So I will let people know how I prefer to communicate so that then I give them something first and then they'll give me something. Oh, that's great you said that because I'm very similar, or then I find out they're dyslexic. Oh, actually, I've got ADHD. And it opens questions again, but it also allows me to then communicate to them in a way that is going to resonate with them. Some people prefer emails. I won't not do them, but if I know that that's the way that they need to hear things, or that's the easiest way to communicate with them. I know people that say they don't touch WhatsApp all day. You email with me, you'll get me straight away. Great, now I know. So,
and I hate voicemail. Anyone leaves me a voicemail, I'm probably not going to hear it for 5 or 6 days because most of the voicemails I get are automated Chinese robots. I don't know why. Probably because I've had the same phone number since I was 18 and I'm now 48. So my number's everywhere and I just get spam calls constantly. So I tend to ignore it. It doesn't work for me. Something you mentioned as well when you were talking about the rugby was something very few bosses ever do. And that's, you said you put your hand up and say, well, that didn't work. I was wrong. I have only, I think, had one boss who would ever admit that they'd made a mistake, that had done something wrong. That didn't work. Every other boss I've had has always been, you've not done it right. I'm right. This is the way it's going to be. How important is it for a boss to admit that they're not infallible?
I think it's huge and has implications across a business and a culture as well. You'll probably find that same boss doesn't hire people that are cleverer than them. They want to hire people that are.
They'd all hired me, so clearly they had. But go on.
Sure. Yeah. But a lot of people don't. They don't want to be. They don't because they're actually their own insecurities and their own ego means I don't want to hire people that will make me look silly because they don't see it as I want to hire somebody who's better than me in a position.
Yeah.
Because that's their strength and that's their goal, and I don't want that. And I think you'll probably have this as well, even with clients, is they'll hire you to do your website, but then try and prescribe to you exactly what you should do for their website. They'll hire you to do a blog, and then they'll tell you exactly what you should write for them, and then critique you, the expert. So actually, there's many, not just being a boss, but a client, a customer, whatever, it has huge implications if you're not willing to say, look, you're the expert here, I don't know. And it comes back down to that leadership thing of being able to ask for help and support, of having the emotional intelligence to be able to say, look, I don't know. I think I'm quite competent at what I do now, but I would actively say I was a stupid person. And because I would also, is there any questions? Yeah, I've got a question. I don't understand that. Can you explain? That's how I learn. Because I will say I don't know. I will be the first one that, did everyone understand? It's my phrase I'm trying to get rid of this year. Does everyone understand? Instantly, everyone says yes. Any questions? Nothing. Tumbleweed. And then we walk out of the room and everyone goes, any idea what he was talking about? I've got no clue. Because we don't want to say, I don't understand. Because what will people think of me? What will my peers think? What do they think? I wasn't paying attention? Do they think I'm not clever? Is my job at threat? But actually it's quite the opposite. But there is still, I would say, the majority, if not the mass majority of people that won't do that.
I absolutely agree with that. I've seen very, very few people that will put their hand up and say, I don't understand. And I've done an education slot at BNI about this very thing, whereby businesses will stand up and talk about their business owners talk about their business, but they'll use acronyms that they understand. So IT companies will talk about RDC and HDMI and various different things that nobody listeners knows what they're talking about. Tax accountants will stand up and talk about MTD, and you'll get financial advisors talking about ISAs and various things. There's never anybody who's ever gone, what? Don't know what that means. But you'll assume everyone knows. And if you're talking about in language that no one understands, then how's anyone ever going to find you a referral? How's anyone ever going to be able to do business with you when they don't know what you're talking about? But no one will tell you. So you're a brave, brave man by putting your hand up and going, what does that mean? Because you're helping them as well as helping yourself.
Yeah, and that's an ego thing again, right? Is that you have to put yourself out there a little bit to ask a question. I'll ask a question sometimes, even if I do know the answer, because I think I might have a different answer. I can't even assume that I think I know, but can I just ask? Does it mean this? Is this what you're referring to? That kind of question also helps. But I'm also not just thinking about me, because I'm thinking about actually me asking a question is enabling the person in front of me to explain something further, which no different to liking or commenting on a LinkedIn post. It's helping their network or helping them expand out what they do. So they're going to look at me and think, oh, I'm so glad somebody asked a question. Thank you for that. And you've built another relationship again.
I've done that in talks as well. There was a lady talking about CBT, and I asked, because I've had this conversation with her before in front of about 20 people, CBT, what does that mean? I knew what it meant, but I knew there was at least one other person around that didn't know what it meant. So I was asking for her to elaborate so other people knew, because there was a three-way conversation at this networking group once where she was talking about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, because she was counsellor, and somebody else there thought they were talking about CBD, cannabis oil, and someone else thought they were talking about the motorbike proficiency test. So she was talking about CBT, while two other people she was talking to were thinking about completely different things. Because if you don't explain what it is, nobody knows what you're talking about. Don't assume that they do.
No, and I think we do a lot of assuming, and we make a lot of assumptions that people will just understand. Oh, everyone knows that. And again, that comes down to our but you don't, because you're so close into your own industry that it becomes that is everything with you. But actually, you don't realise that when you take those steps back out and come back in from a consultant, they don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what you know, and how can you unknow what you know? You can't. So then you have to be more consciously competent in thinking, how do I bring people on a journey? How can I ensure that people listen? It's like when I was at an event recently and somebody was doing a presentation and they were desperate to get to the end of that presentation and they were getting through all the slides. No matter how many, there were so many questions from people about a quarter of the way in on a certain subject. And they had the room, but their ego meant that I've done these slides, I've started, so I'll finish. And they lost the room within seconds. And at the end, nobody had a question and everybody left. And they had such a missed opportunity because they just wouldn't, they had to see it all the way through and they weren't reading and looking at the room.
So what made you want to actually coach businesses? What made you want to help people?
That actually comes from a loss. It comes from my mother passed when I was 20. And actually, that was the catalyst of it. My memories of her, she was ill for a number of years beforehand, and I had to look after her and go to school. And that one, my entrepreneurship kicked in there because I was running a tuck shop. I was sweeping the butchers. I got a fake ID so that I could stack shelves at Tesco's. I was the main breadwinner at that age. But every time people walked into a room with my mum, no matter what was going on in her life, they'd walk in sad and walk out happy or relieved, or they'd walk in crying and leave laughing. And the look that I saw in people when they left and the joy that they had, or the relief that they had from knowing there was something, a plan, a help, a support, was something that really resonated and stuck with me. And it's something that now, even today, my ego, my goal, my selfishness, I guess, in a way, is when I watch somebody in small business understand something or take their business or put the work in because they know why, or that moment where someone goes, oh my God, I've got that. I went away and did it and I've come back and this is working. And that for me is gold dust. That for me is like, that's my jet fuel. That's my everything. So at the same time as doing that, when I was working, coaching and listening, there were so many other people making it about them. There's too many people that make everything about themselves. I come from a corporate background where I was a coach or a trainer, or I was coached or trained. This is the way to do business. You will all do the 5 steps of business. But everyone's different, and no one takes into account the person and what level they're at and who they are and how they learn and what they even want to do. It's that mobile phone thing for me, the analogy of when you ask somebody, say, oh, I'm looking for a new mobile phone, most people will go, you want mine. It's got the best camera, it's got the best screen, it's the best phone, it takes the best this, it takes the best that. Again, ego. But actually, you want to say, well, what are you using it for? Are you vlogging and blogging? Are you taking photos with it? Are you playing games on it? Are you using it for work? Have you got fat thumbs like me and need a big screen? Are you putting it in a clutch bag to go out in an evening? Now, I can offer you a scenario that I'm giving you some information based off of what you need, rather than what I've assumed you need or what I think is best. So I saw a gap in the market to help people in different ways, and gets me out of bed every day with a massive smile on my face.
Yeah, because we talked about that when we spoke the other week, didn't we? That you're not really interested in amassing things and monetary gain. You just like being out in the fields with your dogs.
I love doing that. I love just having that time to do that and be around that. I love being able to help and support if I can. So we're not fortunate enough to have kids, so and I get this will divide people. I say I give 1/3 of my time and money to charity because that's what I would do with kids. And instantly I either get, oh, that's very nice, or 1/3 of your time and money doesn't even scratch the surface, Dave. One of the two. But yeah, it's quite the simple things for me in that respect. And I think that's why I kind of work with that smaller business as well. It's not there's some fantastic people that work with people looking to exit businesses and build them multi-million-pound strategies and stuff that's around. There's great people doing that to help those lifestyle businesses. And also to do that, I have to be that. I can't pull up in my Ferrari from my 12-bedroom mansion and say, I know what it's like to be a small business. I know your struggles. It's disingenuous. It's not true. And so you play to your skill set. And for me, it's helping and supporting those people that gives me the most passion and joy.
So obviously you mentioned charity there. 1/3 of your time and money is incredible. How do you pick charities that you're going to help, and what charities do you help?
I think they picked me, to be honest. I think you know as well that we come across a lot of charities and stuff around. So somebody went out of their way to help me in locally with the Cheshire and Warrington Pledge, and that led me to becoming an enterprise advisor with them and working with a local school to kind of let them know what their students should be knowing about enterprise. I didn't feel that I could give enough to that, so I became a governor of that school to try and help and support a little bit more. I'm a trustee of the YMCA, and that was just because of the people that I'd come in contact with had been kind, warm, engaging, and obviously all charities do great work. 99% of charities do great work. There's a few. But most charities do great work, so that's a given. But actually then it's around the people that spent the time to help and support me when they should be helping and supporting other people. And being a bit selfless made me think, well, actually that's something I want to be involved in and people that I want to be involved in. So sort of attract like. So those are the ways I've done that. And then within the chapters and areas, so my mum passed of cancer. She was in a hospice for a while, so I work with local hospices because that's important to me. But then I want to give back to the local charity, to the local area. So I work with the local football clubs that have got a good youth team so that money can go into that. Even if it's the wrong shaped ball, I do let them off. But again, it's things that resonate with you.
That's wonderful that you can do that you can spend the time to do that. And that you've carved out your life in such a way that you're able to do that. Because too many people that run businesses for themselves, they're working 12-hour days, they don't have the time, there is no work-life balance, but you've made it an important part of what you do. And that's something that I think people should really try to aspire to if they can.
And I think that's if they can bit is really important as well, because actually, I'm not the normal person. You're not the normal person. Not many people are getting up. I was up at 2:30 on Friday to climb a mountain so I could come back and work all day because I'll find the time to go and do that because it was important. So I think everyone has their own story and everyone has their own journey, and some people can do more and some people can do less. Just doing what you can is important. So whether that's, some people putting £5 into a charity bucket when you've only got 20 is a lot more important than someone's putting £100 in when you've got 1,000. Yeah. So everything's relative.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And speaking of time, we are just about running out. So for anyone listening to this who thinks, I'm loving what Dave's saying, I would love to learn more about it, I would love to speak to him, I'd love to work with him, what are the best ways for people to get in touch with you?
Two best ways for me, CheshireBusinessCoaching.com is the website, and search Dave Christie CBC on LinkedIn, which will take you to my LinkedIn page.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. I will put the links to both of those below the podcast in the show notes and in the description for those watching on YouTube, so you can just scroll down and click on those to go directly to Dave. Thank you for being on the podcast. I've loved speaking with you and listening to your stories. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Darren. It's been an absolute pleasure.